as I've said many times before, I never felt like I was a part of the Hollywood system. Mm-hmm. I always felt like this weird outsider. And I think that if it weren't for the fact that I had a mother that really took the time to listen to a kid that said, you know, I want to do this for a living. This is what I know I want to do. This is my passion. You know, 10, 11-year-old kid. If it hadn't been for her taking me to auditions and the sheer proximity of going to a school that accepted me in Beverly Hills, and then being able to drive to the Valley or drive to, you know, Hollywood on the way back from school, I probably wouldn't be doing this for a living. It's a combination of, you know, being in the right place at the right time and being prepared for it, and being aggressive about it and sticking with it. You know, I don't know. I mean, I'd done a lot of television and commercials before then, but it was really this one role that launched my career, and that was This Boy's Life. I was at the right place at the right time and aggressively going out on auditions. Like I said, I always felt like an outsider because I knew of people, you know, that were in the industry. I just didn't know how to get into it. And I remember going to cast different agents when I was 9 or 10 years old. I was rejected twice. I remember there was like this sort of cattle call of kids, and I lined up. It was like a prison photo or something like that. And I'm standing there like this. I had this crazy breakdancing haircut from when I was breakdancing, and I kind of dressed in hip-hop clothing, and I remember they went, yes, yes, went to me, went, nope, yes, yes, nope, yes,
wow.
Yes. And that was it. So I got rejected a couple times, and then I just kept asking and asking and asking. And I remember my dad saying, just stick with it. Someday you'll have your day. And then I came back, I think, 2 years later and finally got an agent. Well, my favorite class was drama school, drama class in high school. I was, you know, it was the only thing I did exceedingly well in. Everything else I was pretty mediocre in, except for biology. I was pretty good in that. But yeah, I mean, my first job was living with a parent who takes drugs, which was an educational kind of after-school thing. And then I got a commercial for Matchbox cars where I played a little gangster and opened a Matchbox set and raced this other kid. And I couldn't believe I got that job. I was excited. From that point on, I was like, if I could do this for a living, if I seriously can get paid for this, and this is a possibility, let's go for it. Let's just keep being aggressive and do it. You know, it's interesting because I remember sort of set up and you're put into this system where I think that you're supposed to be a jack of all trades, and you're 11, 12 years old, and you're sort of conditioned to say, well, you know, the casting director's there and say, well, can you juggle? And you're like, absolutely I can juggle. You know, can you ski? Hell yeah, you know, I'm your man, you know, I'll do whatever you want, you know, little tap dancing shows. So you're supposed to like set yourself up as somebody that can, you know, basically do anything that they want. And I remember sort of having that attitude for a while, and I didn't book a job for like a year at like 12, 13 years old. And I know that's not, it's like a big sob story, but the truth is, it was that year of like rejection where I finally said to I suppose I took a different attitude towards the audition process. And I started to get jobs after that. And I think it was really because I said to myself, you know, I'm not dependent on this job. You know, this isn't going to define me, you know, and I started to sell myself less, prepare more for the roles, you know, really investigate the characters as much as I could, and not feel like, you know, my self-worth was dependent on whether I booked the job or not. And I think that's finally what clicked with me, and I realized that casting directors weren't always necessarily looking for the Broadway showman that could do whatever they wanted, but somebody that had, you know, I don't want to say a little edge to them, but, you know, a different attitude about the audition process. You know, you focus more on the work, you focus more on the character rather than selling yourself constantly to these people, which is, you know, and the auditioning process at a young age was kind of cutthroat.
Theatre was part of my childhood, growing up years. I mean, very much so. In London. My mother was a leading actress in the West End theatre, as it was called. The West End was the Broadway of London. And she was a leading lady, but she was also a character actress, just as I became. And I was a little bit daunted by seeing her in the theatre. It worried me as a child because I thought when somebody was shouting at my mother, I was very upset by that. And I can understand why. I know why, because you don't like to see your mother being shouted at by some nasty man. But, you know, I didn't understand. I was too young to realize that it was all make-believe. I grew up and I learned. And thanks to her, she took me to see some of the great performers of that era in England, in London. And I didn't come to America, you know, until 1940. The Blitz had not actually begun when we left England, but I think the first great big air raid happened on Liverpool, which was the city that we sailed from, literally the day after we left. And our boat was one of the last boats to get out without being torpedoed. So that was when my theatre career really started then, because it was through the American Theatre Wing, actually, that I got...
You had a scholarship.
I got a scholarship to the not Weber Douglas, that was London, to the Fagan School of Dramatic Art in the Rockefeller Center here. And I had 2 great years learning the American way of training for theatre, having already started in England, so I had that bit of classical background, which was very useful as time went by. There was a young student at the school with me at Fagan, and he decided that I had this ability to sing. I had a freaky voice. I could do all kinds of things with it. And he felt that I should do a cabaret act. So darn it, he put one together, and he built it all within the confines of one song by Noel Coward called I Went to a Marvelous Party. So within that song, we introduced all of these characters, German singers and French chanteurs. We did everything, and we used all the voices that I had, which of course subsequently I've used since. I couldn't believe it. I did an audition at Roseland for all of the agents, and by golly, I got an agent. I was 16.
16.
He got me a job up in Montreal, in Canada, at a wonderful kind of Russian night spot called the Samovar. And so I went up there. I lied about my age, that I was 19, and I got paid $60 a week, and that was the beginning of my career.
One of the raps on the method, on the studio, is that it produced a number of actors who looked and behaved like Marlon. To the contrary, Stanislavski said that the purpose of technique is to free the talent. So the talent emerges, and the talent we speak often of the choices, of the actor's choices. The talent lies in the choice, so that there will be great differences among these actors and great variety. When Stanislavski invented or codified the technique, he was actually trying to interpret what people like Duzet and Salvini were already doing. In that sense, he wasn't inventing, and he never claimed to invent it. But what he was after was a grammar, what he called a grammar of acting, a grammar of theater. He asked himself...
A common grammar?
A common grammar.
Yeah.
A common language. Did you hear how many times people use the word language?
Right.
What he wondered was why, for example, a woman can go into a butcher shop and say to her butcher, I want a loin of pork, and not get lamb chops. Why, he asked, should an actor, a writer, a director, not be able to communicate with each other in at least a language as specific as that?
I've been a guest teacher at several different universities, and I've been really amazed at what is taught at the university level. People that go usually to universities and study drama are not taught what they need to learn in order to get a job as an actor when they come out. They're taught the history of theater and an academic approach. But when they come out, they then have to go to acting class and learn how to act the way acting is done today. You know, a lot of people came along and copied Marlon Brando and tore their t-shirts and mumbled, and everybody thought, oh, that's the method. And
right.
Of course, it's not at all, because some of the greatest actors and actresses of the century do the method. And it's just simply a system of working, a way of working. And it's a way to connect with the characters so that you become enlivened. And there are a lot of different exercises that are taught where it will stimulate the actor to be aroused, to find that connection. It would be too long to go into what those exercises are right now. Certainly the effective memory is one of them. In the reading I've done, I discovered that Eleonora Duse in Italy, when she saw Sarah Bernhardt from France, who opened up the whole approach to acting, and she was stimulated to bring her own beingness on stage. And when she went to Russia in the late 19th century and performed there, and Chekhov saw her, he wrote a letter to his sister afterwards about it, and he said, it's a whole new theater that she's introduced me to. And he then started writing plays for that style of acting for the Moscow Art Theater, and that influenced Stanislavski, who then came to America in 1926. And while he was here, Strasberg and Bobby Lewis and all of those people were, Stella Adler, were all young acting students. And they went to see Stanislavski and then started studying with the Russians. Those people then started the group theater. The group theater then, after that closed in 8 years, left behind the greatest body of acting teachers in this country. And all of those people then started the Actors Studio. So it's a direct, we are the yes. Following generation, but it all goes back to Eleonora Duse and Sarah Bernhardt.
Talk about acting teachers. What was the genius or the magic or the gift of Strasberg?
He changed my life. I mean, he really, I would say more than anything else, the biggest thing that he did was he recognized me. I never really took myself seriously until he did. And the first time I worked for him, I did an exercise, a sense memory of the first exercises to create whatever it is you have for breakfast, a cup of coffee or something. And the first words he ever said to me, he said, do you ride horses? And I thought, oh, I know I'm in trouble with a question like that. I said, yes. He said, do you ride well? And I said, well, I used to have my own horse. And he said, did you ride well? I said, well, when I rode regularly, I did. In the meantime, I was still working my cup. He said, well, you don't have to ride that cup. It took me a couple of weeks to totally understand what he meant. He said, what would happen if you made a mistake? Go on, make a mistake. So it was a way of looking at my whole psychology, my whole approach to this cup was my approach to life, my approach to my work. And through the work and through his guidance, I came to reorder my own psychology so that I could take a risk and be willing to make a mistake. And in being willing to make a mistake, meaning to give up the fear of what would happen if I made a mistake, I was then able to break through into my own uniqueness, which we each individually have. So he was a great blessing in my life.
You take voice in college, and they're concerned, I think, with interpretation. When we teach voice, we teach to improve the instrument and let the interpretation come from the acting end of it. And when I came here, I received a degree in theater, which was helpful and informative, and I had 1 year at Yale, which was helpful and informative, but I never really saw actors connect until I went to the Actors Studio. And that was my education, and I must say, I was not brave enough in those days to really get up on my feet, but what I was able to learn from just watching the people that were there, it was like watching that badminton. Watching world-class badminton players play badminton was like watching these actors on the stage. Real sense of improvisation and immediacy. And I had the oratorical aspects of it and the interpretive, but I never had the other. I saw it. So it took me a while before I participated, but I watched it carefully. There are more technical elements that get between you and what you're doing. Not all directors, but most of the directors that you see could be in Akron, Ohio, with their monitors. And there is basically very, very little communication. I've gone on sets where the director is in the other room and the actor is out there laying his guts on the floor, and this detached voice comes through the microphone. Again, please. That's all the advice that the actor gets. Movies have become painfully expensive. Failure is expensive. People find themselves going in to shoot the budget, shoot the schedule, shoot somebody's bonus, and they very rarely shoot the movie. So all of these things stand between this and a polished, accomplished performance. And the more that you can get actors to speak their own language and save their own necks, really, because they're up there all by themselves now, more than they used to be. Because the whole machinery of making films has become a much more technical process.
What's being in trouble for an actor?
Just floundering, not knowing what his purpose is in the scene, what he needs, what he wants. And to give an actor one word that is really expressive. If you can walk into an actor and say, just crowd the other guy. That's such an active thing that the actor can do. Right away, he knows, you know, if he has to get the money, or if he has to get the girl, or if he has to get the mortgage, and that's what he will do. He will crowd his opponent in order to get his thing. That happens to be a physical thing. There are other things, a million things you can tell him. Just say, listen, compliment him by listening. That there are wonderful things that you can give to the actor. There are very few directors who have that language and the immediacy of giving an actor something they can hang their hat on. Well, you've obviously got to be in service of what the scene is about. You can't just be out of control, or I mean, on the limit of adhesion without being relative to scene. This is professional. I'm not talking about acting work. I'm not talking about scene work. But I can't tell you the number of times that the director will come up to me and say, just move it along, get it going a little bit faster. And then, so then you take that information back into the corner and you mull it for a while. And what you do is you come back and you fill each moment with something that's different. And he says, right on. And you say to the script girl, what's the timing on that? She says, it was 19 seconds longer than the time you did it before. You didn't do it faster, you just filled it.
I thought it was a great opportunity to get back on the stage, to get back to my roots. And I get so few opportunities to get on the stage. So when I do, I really like tackling Shakespeare, which is the toughest and the most rewarding.
Not that I love Caesar less, but that I love Rome more. There is no terror, Cassius, in your threats.
I mean, it took me 30 years, but I finally am doing what I wanted to do when I started. The actors I started with in college, we were all snobs, and we thought we would, you know, make $600 a week on Broadway or whatever it was back then. We didn't think about going to Hollywood. That was some Hollywood. You didn't do that. I mean, work is like, you know, garbage man is work. Acting is not work. Acting is a privilege, and it's a craft, and all of those things, but it's not work.